Well, hello and welcome to PM Personality Profile. My name is Nana Nsakwal IV, Chief of the Little Republic of Akomu, Edumasa. And every Friday, repeated on Sunday, I come to you with a guest who may have a story to share. Today, we're going to talk history, I think. It's going to be a history lesson. I, for one person, I have said that there's an era in our history that contributed greatly to our being, to our country. However, it's been wiped off. There are people living in Dansoman, Sakumono, Tema, Akosombo, Koforidia, Bolgatanga, who, had it not been this era, probably would have been living elsewhere homeless. Yet, we tell our story and gloss over it. And today we're going to go back and, relive those moments. It's going to be an emotional one. But when I come back, I am talking to Esther Odartey Wellington, but not about her herself. I'm talking about her dad, Major General Neville Alexander Odartey Wellington. Just before the show, I was calling a few people and I was asking, what do you know about Odartey Wellington? Some says, oh, he was back in the rolling school. Others says, no, he was against the rolling school. No, he was... Nobody actually knows who this gallant man was. Why, indeed, he just got honored by the Ghana Armed Forces just recently, giving him a bold placard with beautiful writing saying how gallant and how brave and how all soldiers should exemplify Odartey Wellington. So how come you and I don't know anything about this gallant soldier? Stay tuned. When I come back, we're talking history. Well, thank you very much, and let me say thank you very much to Crown Apartamento. Once again, they give me their premises to do our recordings. So if you want somewhere to have some leisure, to relax, remember Crown Apartamento, right in airport residential area, very close to the airport, very close to the central business center. So it's a good place to hang out. And I say thank you once again for them, giving me the premises for this interview. But let me say thank you very much, Esther.
Thank you very much, Nana, for having me.
Yes. I've been looking forward to this interview out of my own curiosity. And before I interviewed you, I called a few people.
Right.
And I was trying to find out, what do you know about Odartey Wellington? And it was very vague. Very vague. There are those who said, oh, he was back in the rolling school. There are those who said, no, he was against the rolling school. I'm not sure. I know. Some said he got shot at GBC. Some says no, at Nima. It was very vague. But what was growing up like as an Odartey Wellington? Bemakam, yeah?
Yes, I was actually born at Michelle Camp in Tema.
Okay.
Yes. And then it's really very vague. And I remember we lived at Labadi Villas at Bema Camp. And then from there, in late 60s, we moved to my own barracks, Apremdo, 2BN, 2nd Battalion, in Takoradi. Okay. I remember more of that because I was a bit older then. Yeah, where my father was the commanding officer. Okay. I remember that there in Apremdo, things were very orderly and ordered. And there were inspections. Okay. Oh, yes. There were inspections, and they would look under your bed. There were inspections for the other ranks and the officers.
I think you come to inspect the house?
Oh, yes.
As to whether it was clean or not?
Oh, yes.
Wow.
And if my father was going around to the lines, as we called it, he didn't give any notice. No. Things were very orderly, and it was a whole community. It had a Catholic church, it had a Methodist and Presbyterian combined, maybe an Anglican, I can't remember. It had a mosque, so there was an imam. Everything, it had a market, everything you needed was there. My father, I remember he took a keen interest in our schoolwork. And always found time when he came home to do the homework with us. My mom was a homemaker, and she would do the nursery rhymes and things like that with us. But I remember that he was very keen, and so he had this strategy where we would be several chapters ahead of whatever set book there was. So by the time we got, we knew, And I think it had a lot to do with his background. He lost his mother at a very early age, at about 3 years of age, something like that. And it was very difficult for him. And he had managed to pull himself, by his bootstraps. So I think he was very keen that we did well in life. So nothing handed on a silver platter, but through hard work, sheer graft, and schoolwork. So he was very keen, yes, on that. And life in the house was very orderly.
Now, he was quite a passionate soldier. I mean, did he find time to do family time or family work?
Yeah, that's what I've said. He was very keen on the homework and things like that in the early years and all throughout. But as he assumed more senior roles, I think it became a bit more difficult. And then, of course, we were in boarding school by that stage as well. So, yeah, it was only now and again he might come to visit at school. And he would find time for the main things like confirmations or first day at school. Or if you had a problem, he'd find time to talk to you. And then we had the little brother still at home, and he always used to file away his little doodles, drawings of him, and he had time to go through your school report with you when it came, and then talk to you, and if he had to give you a talking to, you were given a talking to, and then it was filed away. And then, of course, his fatherly responsibilities, like paying the school fees and doing all those things, he was very strong on that. Yes, so I think he ran his personal life as he did his work life, very orderly, yes.
But he started life as a postman.
Not a postman. And now, his father was a senior civil servant, and he was with the post office.
Okay.
So when Daddy finished school, his father sent him to the post office. Incidentally, it was the post office at Birmingham. Yes, and that is where we lived in the last years of his life. The house, bungalow, was round the corner, walking distance from the post office.
Okay.
And by some quirk of fate, the army headquarters now is also a stone throw. So you see, now you have the complex named after him, this building, with his name in bold letters, and it's just really, yeah. So anyway, I digress. Yeah, so he followed him as a post and telecommunications officer. That was what his title was. I've seen in his records. And while there, he got his calling to enter the military. So when he went to Sandhurst, well, we've accessed this record, so we could see from the forms that his preference was to be in signals, to be a signal officer, because he had been a post and telecommunications officer. It was the natural
progression,
yeah, exactly. But somehow he found his home in infantry, and that is where he belonged. There couldn't have been a finer infantryman than.
Because he was, I've seen some of these reports from Sandhurst, that he was a people's person, and that people just warmed up to him. Did you get that? You know, sometimes you read about your dad and you think, really? Was he like that? I mean, did you see him like that, or these are the things that you read about?
He could be very stern and not, and very keen to give you a good blasting. I have met officers now, and some of officers now, who always have a tale to tell me about how maybe they didn't do this or didn't do that, and they were summoned, and then they will go through the whole procedure and tell me, and they would say it with humor and warmth, and say, well, I deserved it, or I learned a lot. So he was very stern.
But fair.
But very fair. He was very fair. And he was not at all pompous. And he was he could be very jolly and had a very good sense of humor. If you saw him with his military bearing and the mustache twitching up and down, but he really was a lovely, warm person. He didn't like nonsense. He was very strong on discipline, but he was very sociable also. Yeah. So.
And he went through the ranks to literally become the army commander.
That's correct.
Probably a silly question, but what was it like going through the ranks? Because you would have seen him, rise through the army.
When we moved to Takoradi in the 60s, he went there as the commanding officer. And actually, so when I really was able to discern things, I think I always saw him in a position of authority. So now looking back, he was in his 30s, but to me he seemed very old, you see. He seemed very old. But he wasn't that old, and he just had that aura and that bearing. From the 2nd Battalion, he then left at the end of his term there and went to the Staff College at Camberley in the UK. And then he came back as a Lieutenant Colonel, if I remember correctly. And then we moved from there to Kwadaso, to Kumasi, 4BN, where again he was the commanding officer. But we didn't stay there long. And then we came down to Accra. And then he went to MATS, the military academy. Yeah, I think he was there. And then we didn't stay long there. And then we went back to Takoradi, but this time in a civilian role. He was appointed the chief executive of Ghana Timber Marketing Board.
Okay.
And in those days, and maybe it still is the case, I don't know, timber was seen as the poor cousin to cocoa. And it didn't make us much money. But he went there with great drive and enthusiasm and with the same military discipline that he's well known for. And he turned things around. And even got an office in the UK to be profitable. No, he turned things around. So timber was good here, and timber had a good office in the UK as well. We stayed there, I can't remember, a couple of years. Then we came back down to Accra, and he went to 1 brigade commander. So again, that was a very senior role. Then at some point, he became a full colonel. And then he did that for a bit. I can't remember for how long off the top of my head. And then we went back. Well, we were still in the camp, but then he was a commissioner for agriculture. So had a great role.
So this was then the SMC era?
NRC first, then it became SMC1, SMC2. So I think that might have been NRC leading to SMC1. He became a commissioner for agriculture, so played a very big role in Operation Feed Yourself project of General Achampo, which was very successful. Ghana was exporting food and so on, and self-reliance was a big thing. And then from there he moved, and agriculture maybe still is, it was not very popular. Health wasn't popular. So from agriculture then he moved to health, Minister of Health. So he did that and then returned to barracks to 1 brigade. And then from 1 brigade, the natural progression was Army Commander,
Wow.
which he became in 1978. I think it was July. That's right.
Let's do a bit of Operation Feed Yourself, because I remember planting some cocoyam under the Operation Feed Yourself. I mean, everybody, even if it was a flower pot, just put a couple of
That's correct.
maize in it. You know.
Everybody was encouraged to do
something
in their backyard.
Backyard.
And it was all self-reliance. We can do it. The can-do spirit and the corporate, feeling, the team effort, the team work, which sadly seems to be missing in these days when it's me, myself, and I.
I see. So, well, I never knew that Daddy was in charge of Agric then.
Yes.
So becomes Army Commander in 78.
That's correct.
June 4th, 79. That is Waterloo.
That's correct.
I'm going to take a quick break and come back. Don't go away. Now it's going to get exciting. Thank you very much for staying, and I'm talking to Esther Odartey Wellington. Esther, June 4th, 1979, it's probably the saddest day for your family. Do you recall that day?
Yes, I do. I was in school at the time, in the middle of my exams. And I remember that morning, we have this old, those box radios, and then we heard there was something, and then at some point I heard my father on the air, very calm, saying there's been this, that, and the other, the insurrection has been quelled, everybody should return to that, very calm. So that was reassuring.
Sorry to interject, but
Yeah.
what I find amazing is that he said that even if you were part of the insurrection, it's okay. Just come back to barracks, we'll deal with it.
Yeah.
I was expecting him to say, look, woe betides anyone who was part of this.
Yeah.
But he said, even if you're part of it, you just return to post, we'll deal with this issue.
But you see, that is the mark of a true general. The safety of his troops was paramount, was very important to him. The safety of the population at large. Because imagine if he had gone out and said, you'll be dealt with this, that, they were going to run amok. And the civilian population was going to bear the brunt of it. He was very, very keen that casualties be avoided or to be kept to the barest minimum. And that is why on that day he called for a truce. And as you might have heard on the broadcast, he said, return to barracks. Everybody should go about their normal duties. And I will meet these people, listen to their grievances, and any other alleged crimes or misdemeanors or whatever. So Daddy was, to him, keeping casualties, that was the most important thing at that point.
So after the coup was announced in the morning,
Yes.
the he then went to GBC to make the announcement?
Yes. What had happened, he wanted broadcasting secured for him. So as I understand it, he asked a Recce regiment, which was under the command of Major Suleimana in those days, to secure the broadcasting. And that task was given to Major Reader, who was one of the squadron commanders there. So he went to the broadcasting house first. He secured it and he made an announcement. So I think that was signal to the general that, and then he went. And I have been told that when he arrived there, his first question was, are there any casualties? So that was always paramount. And he was told that there had been no casualties, I think. So when you hear people say things like, he arrived there, guns blazing, it's totally false. And that is when he then made his announcement, which was very calm, as compared to the leader of the insurrection, who was very excitable and excited and was screaming and yelling. Daddy was cool and very calm. So then he gave his announcement. And after that, he moved to the police headquarters to strategize and was with the team. And while he was there, I think they sought to kill him. So there were planes flying over, shooting, and again he was concerned for his officers and his men. So he decided to leave, and they remonstrated with him and said, "Sir, do stay, we shall protect you." But he said no. He could have had their protection, but I'm sure that he didn't want to live at the expense of these young officers. So he decided to leave to the Nima police station. And he was there with his ADC, Captain Opoku, and his bodyguard Bento, in the commander's office there. And
why the Nima police station?
well, I mean, I don't know what he, I can't answer that, but it was a forces office, wasn't it? The police force.
Okay.
It was perhaps a small place, which nobody perhaps would not exactly pay attention to, or ordinarily think that the army commander would go in there, you see. So, but, so I would think that is why he went there. But in any event, he wanted to distance himself from all the troops there to save them, really. And even when he went to the Nima police station, he told the bodyguard and the ADC that they were young men and to leave, but they did not. But he didn't also go in mufti, in civilian way. He was in his full military uniforms, so he was identifiable. He left in a police Mowag, small armored car there. And while he was there, I think some people saw, and then they were hunting for him, I think. And a chap called Gachiko, gun tottering, wielding, drunk, maybe under the influence of marijuana, I don't know, went in there. My father got hit through a window. And while he was lying there, this man and others burst in, and the ADC said to him, time-honored military fashion, the general is hurt, let's get medical help for him. You would do that even to an enemy combatant, you know that. People have been arraigned before courts afterwards for maltreating prisoners of war. And this soldier, I will not call him a soldier, a proper soldier doesn't do that. This man took out his rifle and he just executed my father in cold blood in a police station.
So the story about this gunfight, what he was shooting and spraying and shooting and spraying?
No, it's not true. If anyone was shooting, because look, let me go back. When the troubles started, the brigade commander at the time, who had access or who had to give instruction for the armory to be open, refused to do it or was nowhere to be found or whatever. That is one of the tragedies of that day. However, the mutineers managed, I don't know how, at some point to get hold of some guns, and they were distributing them to people who had no business carrying arms. The military, the gun, it's a big family. It's got cooks, it's got doctors, it's got gardeners, it's got all sorts in it. A cook is not trained to carry a rifle. They were just giving out these things willy-nilly. And so there were gun-toting people all over the place, firing indiscriminately. But I will repeat, General Odartey Wellington was very key to avoid casualties. And in effect, he sacrificed himself. Because if the murderous rampage actually reached a crescendo once he died. If he had sought to protect himself, there would have been carnage.
Because he could have ordered his men to fight back.
Exactly. And it would have spilled into the larger population. So Ghana owes a great debt to General Odartey Wellington.
I mean, you've spoken to Major Reader, some of the people who were close. I mean, why didn't he at that point say, you know something, fight?
You see...
Because even at that point, he was telling people, look, let's ceasefire.
My father was a very decent man. And he was a true soldier, you know. Or he was a soldier in the true sense of the word. And also, let's look at the history of Ghana pre-1979. What happened on June 4 was without precedence. It had never happened before. So, and I shouldn't try to I don't know what was in his mind, but I'm just, with all the facts that I have to hand, apart from avoiding casualties also, what happened was without precedence. And I don't think anybody ever imagined that these boys would go to the extent that they did. And frog march their generals? It was without precedent. So I don't think General Odartey Wellington, And imagine if he had given the order in these armored cars, and imagine what it would have been. Imagine. The country owes him a great debt.
Why didn't he put on a mufti and the usual thing, head off to Togo?
A general? A soldier? But that's the coward's way. You take an oath to protect your country. Now, let's assume that it was a foreign force, enemies from outside coming. How did he know at that point? You see, one didn't know. It could have been an invading foreign force. So he did what he had to do. Protect his country. He was a patriot. He exemplified sacrifice, immense courage, and valor. It would never have entered his head, no. When he was called by one of his commanders, he wore his uniform and he left and went straight off to take charge of things, because the chief of defense staff at that time was nowhere to be seen. When he resurfaced later, it was to announce himself as the liaison officer between the government of the day and the mutineers.
What did Mom say that morning when he was leaving home?
Well, I was in school, of course, but I know that he was in touch with her over the phone. Until I think they heard no more.
How would Mom call him? Neville or?
No, Alex.
Alex. Well, Mom said, look, Alex.
Aidan, which
Alex,
is
look, forget about this thing. Don't go.
You know, when you when you're married to a military man, or even when you're a child of a military person, you know, it courses through our veins. We didn't know any better. Don't forget, Daddy had seen active service in Congo. There had been various operations where he had, you know, participated. So what do? You give him the support, and then you look after the house, and he goes knowing that there is a stalwart woman in the house looking after the family. So that is how it had always been. So she wouldn't have, no, he wouldn't have listened anyway, but she wouldn't have tried to stop him. No, I don't think it entered into, no.
We are coming straight back, don't go away. Well, thank you very much for staying, and that's a posthumous personality profile. Things that probably we would have wanted to speak to the general about, but thankfully his beautiful daughter is here to do that on his behalf. You see, do you think history has dealt Daddy's era, the SMC 1 and 2, you know, a hard blow? Because, you know, they did quite a bit, but it seems to have glossed over. I don't know, coming from that culture, if you feel the same.
You are absolutely right there, Nana. I'm constantly amazed at the ignorance of people that I talk to. They don't know anything about that era, 1972 to 1979. Yeah. They don't know anything at all. And I think that there has been a systematic and deliberate attempt to wipe out that part of our history, the achievements of the generals or the NRC and SMC governments. Because when you look at the 7 years, what they achieved in 7 years, I don't think any government in this country has been able to achieve as much in that space of time.
Could it be that because they overthrew a constitution and therefore we say, well, they overthrew a constitution, so we don't want to talk about it?
Look, at the end of the day, it was a completely bloodless coup.
Yeah.
These were not junior officers, ill-educated, no. They were the cream of the crop. Now, even if they overthrew a constitution, what did they do with the power that they had? SNIT was started by General Achampo. Social Security Bank, General Achampo. You mentioned Operation Feed Yourself. Pond Dam to supplement Akosombo. There was this energy, whatever line to Togo Dahomey, electricity, to supply Benin now, electricity there. You mentioned Wager Dam. You mentioned Dansoman. They had lots of low-cost or affordable housing in all the regional district capitals. We don't talk about that. What about successfully changing over to driving on the right-hand side of the road? What about successfully implementing a metric system, taking over the imperial system? What about Kumasi, the medical school there, and various via irrigation project, tunnel irrigation project, Dowenya? What about electrification, not in Accra, outside Accra, various things that they did.
Koforidua.
Koforidua, what Colonel Minila did there, what Colonel Simpia Santi did with sports or stadia in all the regional capitals, floodlit Accra and Kumasi, what Colonel Nkegbe did with education, introducing the National Pledge, National Service Secretariat. The list goes on and on and on and on. Yet we are made to believe that our fathers did nothing. And that is in the space of 7 years. And don't forget, they were actually spearheading Opomansi Iron and Steel Works, working with Dr. R.P. Barfour on that. And that was to launch a major industrialization program. And that is when, you know, they were killed. Now, 40 years down the line, I see something in the press about some steel works somewhere with a foreign company. Now, this was going to be wholly Ghanaian run, Ghanaian owned. There was also a concerted effort to ensure that Ghana had majority shareholding in all extraction of natural resources, so that I think the government managed to get, was it majority shareholding from Tiny Roland, is that the name? Yeah, voila. Roland, yeah. So you see, a lot was that, and all these things have been swept under the carpet. And I think that I don't know why, but perhaps it makes people feel better because then they can justify killing them. But I say that no level of national interest justifies sending a section of the population into such misery. And I would like to say that the National Reconciliation Commission came out with a report, and you try getting hold of a copy of the executive summary. Try getting hold of a copy of the white paper. They have been systematically taken out of circulation, and it's very important that the country makes peace with its past. When Nazi Germany was overthrown, the Third Reich, for the first 10 years, they were silent. And then gradually in the 60s, people started asking their parents, grandpa, grandma, mommy, daddy, where were you? What did you do? What happened? Until 40 years later, in 1985, when the then president, Richard von, what's his name? Weizsäcker. Now, I don't speak Dutch, so they should forgive me for mispronouncing. He made a speech, and you know, you really, and he accepted what had happened and said that a country that is blind or refuses to examine its past is going to be blind to its present and its future. It is very important that we acknowledge, and there is hardly any country in this world which hasn't had problems or hasn't had any scandalous. So we have to accept it for what it is. It was a blight on this country's history, and we have to accept it, and we learn from it. But if we don't learn from it, and we have people who, you read the report, and these are not apocryphal stories, but names are given when somebody is accused of hoarding flour, and so a soldier gets gunpowder and chili powder, mixes a concoction, and douches her with it. And that person is not brought to account, or we don't teach our children and our grandchildren, this is what happened, it should never be repeated, then what we are saying is anything goes. And we live in a society where anything goes, and it's unacceptable.
Finally, the army, has given, I think, a befitting memorial recommendation for Daddy. Was it satisfactory? Was it worth it? I don't know.
No, well, years ago, we heard, nobody approached us, we heard that an obscure tennis court somewhere had been named after him. That is laughable. This time round, and I pay tribute really to the current Army Commander, Major General Azuri Ayamdo, for his courage in standing up and saying something has to be done for General Odartey Wellington. And he has done what is within his power to do, which is to name this block, the complex, after General Odartey Wellington. So, of course, we are grateful to General Ayamdo for doing that. This is long in coming, and I hope it's the first of many things to come. Yes.
Well, they say a country that doesn't recognize its heroes is not worth dying for.
Indeed, indeed.
But a big question, but short time to answer. And I know some people are saying, oh, it's been 40 years. Why are you still going on about the general?
When people say that, I think it's their own guilt, or I don't know what it is. Because look, 400 years when the first slave landed in Virginia. And what we do? We call their descendants, come back home. 400 years. And 40 years when we take our generals and tie them to the stake. Not only their generals, but civilians are tortured in indescribable ways. 40 years, how can that be too long? Mind you, it took 40 years for a German president to stand up and say, let us do some self-introspection. We owe it to ourselves to examine what happened. And I have been waiting for somebody here 40 years down the line to be the guardian of the country's moral conscience and say, we did things we should not have done. It's about time we looked at it. It's about time we educated our children and our grandchildren. It's about time we wrote history as it is and not try to change it. It doesn't do anything. If you don't confront your past, you are not likely to make a good future or a better future or a better present anyway. So I don't think 40 years at all is too long a time. How many years down after the World War, and we're still not celebrating, but commemorating, Armistice Day, Memorial Day, Remembrance Day, so that we don't repeat the things of the past. But if we carry on putting our head in the sand like ostriches, what are we going to do? We are going to repeat the past mistakes, and we're going to think mob rule is the way to go and anything goes. And I want to say today that you cannot run a successful country with the mantra, anything goes. It's not the way to live.
It's a bad precedent.
It is indeed.
It's a bad precedent. It's very unfortunate, but, dare I say this, but, our history is either the Dankwabuzia, a bit of Nkrumah, or the NDC Rawlings history. So anything aside, so Liman, the SMC guys have all been wiped out, but they have played a part. I don't have the power, I don't know who has the power, but how do we rewrite and incorporate all these things into our history?
I think when we begin to accept that we did some terrible things. Look where Germany is today. They didn't get there by pretending that Hitler didn't live. They pretended for a short space of time, but eventually they realized that they really had to make peace with their past. We haven't done that, and I don't see anybody wanting to do it. You go to Kigali, and they've got the museum, they've got all the skulls and things there. The people, some of them who caused those things, they're still there, but then they discussed it, they got together, those who had to be punished were punished. But you are in a country, or we are in a country, where people that were, let me take a small example. There was something called the PIT, the Pre-Trial Investigation Team, which operated during the AFRC. And they were a wicked bunch of men. And it woe betide you if you went before them. Some of them are still in places of authority. Some of them run for parliament. So what are we telling our children? Anything goes. That is the problem. when we confront it. And there is nothing like national guilt, collective, individual guilt. That is what it is. And people, we don't know what happened. People have deliberately seared their consciences so that they don't remember or they feign ignorance. If you want to know, you will know. Many people were around when they were splaying women's legs and caning them in between their legs and putting children there to shout, "Eye kania, eye hai." It happened. People turn the other way. Evil thrives when good men say or do nothing. It's about time we accepted what happened and dealt with it. That is the only way forward. And 40 years is not too long a time. 400 years down the line, we call in descendants of slaves to come down. And we can't deal with our own problems. 40 years down the line, it cuts both ways.
Wow, wow, wow. I wish we all have daughters who will stand and defend us, not when we're dead, but while we're still alive. While we're still alive. Do you tell daddy stories to their grandchildren, you know, who their grandfather was?
Yes. I don't have any children myself.
Okay.
But I've got siblings who have children.
Yeah.
And I'm very careful just to lay the facts there as they are.
Yeah.
Yes, and not try and inculcate any hatred or anything like that, but give them the facts, you know, as they are.
Yeah.
And I do that too also to young people that I come across, because a lot of them are very ignorant on what happened.
Yeah.
There are no books for them to look at, nothing. Though sometimes I go abroad and I mention my name and people say, "Oh, such and such, do you know?" And when I mention that, the person was actually, they are very shocked, and yeah, so he's recognized, you know, elsewhere. But here people try to downplay, yes, because if they didn't do that, then they wouldn't be able to justify, you know, what they did. The mistake has already been made. We can't undo the wrong, but at least we can begin to rehabilitate the memories of these gallant men. Not many people are like General Odartey Wellington. He has been described by his peers as the greatest Ghanaian general in our contemporary times.
Wow.
And that is no mean feat.
Wow.
And he deserves to be honored at the highest level. And indeed, the National Reconciliation Commission recommended that he be honored. And we are still waiting for Ghana to do that. They haven't done it.
Well, I'm sure it will happen. Well, let me hope it happens while you are alive and kicking, so that one day when you meet him, you can tell him that, hey, it finally happened.
That would be great.
You see, but that was a bit of history I thought we all share. Great part of our history that's been glossed over. But as we said, you know, if you're blind to your history, you'll be blind to your present and your future. I want to say a big thank you to Esther Odartey Wellington for granting me this interview, for educating me and yourself. Most of you have bits and pieces of the story, but this was, you know, a part of it, not the whole of it, but a part of it which was factual. Until I come to you again with another fine personality, I want to say thank you so much for watching. And Esther, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Nana. It's been a real pleasure.
Yes.